Hey, Dr. Grace. Obviously, I know you, but could you tell us a little about you, who you are, what you do for the people listening?
Right now, I'm a professor of psychology. I've been doing psych stuff for probably 90 years now. It feels like in that capacity, I've done mostly university work, and research is primarily the two areas: teaching, and then took a little detour into the administrative side for a while there. That was fine, number of years, but I still kept teaching, and I love it. I love university life, interacting, with students, and now my research and kind of more practical interests are in relationships. So my wife and I get to run a center for marriage and relationships at a place called Biola University, and we're in Southern California, and I've been doing this center now. It's called the Center for Marriage and Relationships. We've been doing that for about maybe 11 years, my wife and I. We do it as a ministry. It's in the university, but we're funded by donors, and that lets us do a lot of cool things, a lot of speaking with other organizations for conferences, marriage conferences. So we about 20, 30 times a year, we're out speaking at some conference in some city somewhere with either a group called Family Life or Focus on the Family. We do both of those. Then we do our own marriage conferences. So married, couple of kids that we love that are awesome kids, three of them. And now even they're starting to get married and having children. So that's us.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, Dr. Grace, I know most important thing about you is Christ. Can you kind of walk me through your testimony, the whole story, how you came to know Jesus?
Oh yeah, I'd love to. So Patrick, I guess I could say I grew up in a very non-Christian home. That is, there was, no religious influence whatsoever. Now, I mean, the Catholic Church was around in my community, and almost everybody I knew was Catholic. In fact, I met a Protestant one time. I'm like, what's that? So, but he wasn't much of a good Protestant anyway. He just wasn't a Catholic. But I never really went to church after about 5 years of age. I just had too many worldly influences. So I grew up non-Christian, very poor families, socioeconomic, blue collar. I grew up in Southern Colorado. And really what happened for me was just that background of five brothers, blue collar, non-religious. I just followed the world and did, sports and girls and partying, and never really, I didn't know there was a different life. I didn't know there was much beyond that. But something happened to me in a baseball game. I was in high school, maybe my I can't remember, junior year. And I felt that I heard from God. Now, it could have been an angel, it could have been my own brain, but something in that baseball game happened in the ninth inning, bottom of the ninth, where I just felt like God asked me, "Do you believe that I am?" And I'm like, I've never talked to him, sought him, prayed to him really. And all of a sudden, I just felt like I had to answer the question if he existed or not. And I don't know where that came from or why. Yeah. So what happened was, Patrick, I just decided I'm not answering this question. I'm trying to hit a curveball, man. It's the ninth inning, guy on, and I'm not answering it. So I didn't. And first pitch, strike one. And then I heard either the voice or the feeling that I had to make this decision. Do you believe that I am? And I said, I'm not answering that question. I'm trying to hit a curveball. And I literally stood outside the box going, what is happening? I'm looking around at my coach, like, are you guys hearing this voice? Or is it just me? What's happening? And the coach's looking at me like, Gracie, that's a curveball. It's, step in, strike two. It's just this overwhelming sense of needing to decide either way. God either existed or he didn't. It felt like a pivotal moment. So I stepped out of the box and I felt it again. And I knew I couldn't say I'm not answering it. I had to answer it. And you know what I said, Patrick? To myself, maybe I whispered it. I don't know. I said, I believe God, you're there. I didn't really feel all that different, but the guy throws the pitch. By the way, it was another curveball. I happened to hit it, win the game. I mean, the guy comes around and scores. Well, Patrick, nothing happened. Well, the fans went wild. My teammates went wild. All 20 fans that were in the stadium went wild. But I never told anybody. I didn't know what that was. I didn't know who would I talk to about this, right? Who would you say, man? God asked me if he was real, and I said yes, and hit a ball and won it. But it kept with me and it stuck with me. Well, I had nobody to talk to. I didn't share it with anybody. I went to college, the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, with my dad. My dad moved there. Brothers and everybody was dealing with, messing around in drugs and some jail time. My dad was a cop, but he ended up going to prison for a year when I was in probably seventh grade. Ended up buying a bar, my dad did, with another woman. I ended up cleaning that bar every day at 6 a.m. every day, 5 days a week, my sophomore, junior, and senior year of high school. And it was in the middle of one of those cleaning. I'm sitting there, cleaning up vomit or whatever it is, at a bar. But that feeling that something spiritual happened to me. Something happened, but I just didn't know what. So now here my daddy moves to Vegas. I go to school there, and I'm having this feeling so strongly that I need to figure out what happened. I asked my dad if we had a Bible. And I said, Dad, we got a Bible. And he goes, no, son, I don't have a Bible. I said, Dad, where do you get a Bible? He's like, son, I have no idea. I don't know. I don't know, the church. I don't know where you get Bible. I go, huh. Do you have to go to a store and buy a Bible? I don't know. I guess they probably have Bible stores somewhere. I don't know. I said, do you think you have to go to a hotel, check in, and steal the Bible? Because that's the only place I'd ever seen one. And he goes, yeah, that's probably what I would do. I'd probably, but that was it. The end of the conversation was, well, none of us knew how to get a Bible. So I just kept going in life, and I never got a Bible. And now I transfer to the University of Northern Colorado, and I still can't shake that. I want to know what happened to me. There is a God? I believe that, but what does this mean for me? So, Patrick, I was standing in line at a registration table. Back then, you registered in person instead of online. And I stood there, and a guy walked up to me, and he tapped me on the shoulder, basically. And he said, hey, I got a couple questions. Would you be interested in taking a survey? And I'm like, yeah, sure. Why not? And he said, all right, first question, do you believe in God? And I went, I do, almost like, huh, okay, maybe I can talk to this Yahoo. I said, I do believe in God. And he goes, all right, do you ever read the Bible? And I'm like, well, I would if I had one. Like, where do you get Bibles? And he's like, oh, well, there's a lot of different places. I probably have one I can get you. I go, you can give me a Bible. Yeah, he goes, yeah, let's try it. Who, in third question, do you know who Jesus was? And I went, nah. Well, I mean, I know what everybody says. So in the old Catholic tradition, Father, Son, Holy Ghost, right? I'm like, oh, he's this dude, the Father, Son, he's the Son. And he goes, all right, that's pretty close. Yeah, that's good. And he says, would you ever want to talk to anybody about spiritual things? And I'm like, man, you have no idea how much I want to talk. So Patrick, the dude came to my room, brought a Bible. I got 4 or 5 of my buddies on the floor, and I said, would you teach us about this Bible and about what's in it? And he said, yeah, I'd love to. And he did. He shared the gospel. And in that dorm room, I accepted Jesus when I heard the gospel for the first time, that he died for my sins on the cross. He took away all these things, and I have only, as truly God, fully man, he served this perfect sacrifice for us and for our sins. So right then and there, me and one of the other guys accepted Jesus. Things changed at that point. A lot of the questions I was having began to be answered. A feeling of, I finally figured out what was happening to me. I got the answers. A lot of people's testimony of how they come to Jesus and know him is, breaks down into some different ways. A lot of people like you, Patrick, have this kind of intellectual, I need to know. It's a searching of scripture. It's a searching of your heart. It's a searching of other ways. And it's very intellectual. Mine had nothing to do. Mine was all emotions and heart. I mean, I just bought it. You say he was God's son. I'm like, that sounds great to me. It's in the Bible. I'll take it. And I just went, this is right. I know, I feel this. Something is different. And so I kind of came at it from that kind of angle that some of us come from, of like wholesale bought in. I stopped mostly cussing and drinking and doing drugs and being with women. I stopped mostly, I still, you know how that is, man. You can kind of struggle with all those things still. But I knew that he had called me during a baseball game. He put his hand there. He told me something. I don't know why he was pursuing me. I don't get it. I now understand what, being pursued by grace is, because I had nothing of great qualities, man. I was drinking, smoking, with girls, partying. I was doing everything that you would expect a non-Christian to do. So there's nothing that marked me that as, oh yeah, this guy's going places. He's going to be, he's going to be in fact, you would think this is just the opposite of what we want, as far as Christ followers. And that's who Jesus is. He comes and he finds that person that he pursues, and then he doesn't give up, man. He kept chasing me everywhere, and I knew it. I just didn't know it till I figured out who it was. And so I approached it with a wholesale, complete buy-in.
So every person I've talked to on here has all had a moment where they had God speak to them. And you had that same kind of moment. And I think that's really interesting, that it's almost like God calls out his people.
Yeah, I don't, it's so weird that it seems like all of us, all humans, must have a moment, and they either listen to it or run from it, and so it never does anything. But doesn't it feel like each person at some point has to do something with that feeling or voice?
Yeah, I mean, everyone I've talked to on here has all had that moment. And I think that's super interesting that everyone seems to have that call.
And maybe that call is through a person, right? Maybe it's through reading, maybe it's through walking in nature, and all of a sudden they feel in the stars or in the forest the presence of good or the presence of God, and they have to make a decision. I mean, it's not necessarily a voice, right? It could just be an understanding. And there's one guy who wrote about this that I really loved, and he says there are some that hit these transformative moments that are distinct and clear and real, that they're encountering the presence of God, the supernatural, and life is never going to be the same. The way he talks about it, in fact, there's a word he uses for it, and it'll come to me in a little bit, and it's the title of his book. And those sudden transformations, he said, not everybody. He goes, but most of them, a lot of them don't talk about it. It's so personal and so real and so deep. Maybe I didn't know who to talk to because I also didn't want to. It was like mine. It was deep. It was big. Now, in those transformative moments, not everybody has such a thing. Others kind of come at it, in a more systematic way. Maybe if you've been in the church a long time, and you were raised that way. But even those people have that as well.
So what would you say is like the biggest lesson you learned from your whole story, your testimony, like coming to know the Lord?
Yeah. For me, the biggest takeaway is people are not unseen. He knows you. He knows your heart. He knows where you're at. He's never left you. He'll never forsake you. And he'll never stop pursuing. That takeaway for me has changed the way I see people. Slowly at first, I think, but more so as I started getting along, I started to realize that the world looks up to or seeks out certain people. That's why we have this amazing, culture of idolizing those that are rich or beautiful or popular or powerful. And God needs them just as much as anything and wants them just to be walking with him. But he doesn't take his eye off, nor does he cease to use those who can do nothing for him. Guy named, I don't know who did this quote. No one maybe ever knows, but it's, you can always tell the character of a man by the way he treats those who can do nothing for him. They got a story, and sometimes they just need to be listened to. Sometimes they just need someone to talk to. And that always stuck with me, was that God never gives up on any of us. And sometimes it's that person that's on the street, that looks homeless, that maybe is in a lifestyle that we don't like or know. They need Jesus. And so never take your eyes off of them. I feel like I could have been that one, as far as being as far away. Almost exactly a year ago, I had a brother, one of my twin brothers was murdered in a carjacking. And he'd been involved in most of his life in drugs. He knew Jesus, but this addiction held on to him. Well, Patrick, what ended up happening in this story, I think the takeaway for me was when I had to go back with my mom and another brother, and we cleaned out his apartment, and there were people living there with my brother. There were 2 prostitutes, a drug dealer, and a gang member. Patrick, I'll tell you what, sitting in that room talking to them and listening to the stories of my brother that they would share, how he brought him into their home, how he gave him a place to sleep, how they were homeless on the streets, and he would say, come stay, you can stay here. And a lot of it, I'm sure, was about drug use, but it was also just a sense of somebody bringing them in. What I sensed in that room 1 year ago was the presence of God. And it just resonates with them. They they want to take and sponge like sponges and take it in, and yeah, God is real. He walks with me. And these are people, Patrick, that we oftentimes ignore in our culture and our society. We don't, we're like, yeah, you're messed up. Man, these are the very people I think that God pursues and goes after. And I really felt his presence there. And I think that kind of bolstered my takeaway from me was that God does look out for and seek the widow and the hurting and the infant and the one that's left behind and those that are far from him, and he calls them like a sheep. And we're the 90, we're not one of the 99. We're the one that got away, and he went and he's looking for those.
That's awesome. So what would be one verse that you live by that is kind of characterizes your life now?
Yeah, that's a great question. There are so many, huh? I mean, it's like 1 week that's a good one, and the next year that's a good one. One that I'll never kind of cease to be amazed about is in Colossians, and it's in chapter 1, and it basically is he rescued us from the domain of darkness and transferred us to the kingdom of his son, the kingdom of light. And the he in there is Jesus. Jesus rescued us, transferred us from this kingdom of darkness, and transferred us by nothing we did. He just went and found us and grabbed us, and he put us into the kingdom of his son, this kingdom of light. And I just can't shake that, because it's not something I deserved. It's not something I sought. It's not something that was because I'm so good, or, it's not because I had the right thoughts or the right family or anything. It was just simply through his grace. And I believe he offers that to everybody. It's just some of us choose to let ourselves be rescued or not.
Man, I love that. Well, thank you for coming on and taking time out of your schedule and sharing your story.
Thank you for doing a podcast like this and getting the word out of the amazing, amazing number of ways he calls us. It's as deep and profound and wide as his love for us. And what you're doing is giving people, Patrick, hope that he can call them just as they are, who they are, regardless of their circumstances. And that's why I really appreciate what you're doing.
That means a lot. Thank you. I'm really trying to have a lot of stories on here so the one person who has the same story can listen and say, I can make it too. And that's the goal.
That's exactly it, man. God go before you, and blessings on you on that.